Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for being here today. I am excited to present to you A Letter to God by G.L. Fuentes. In this presentation, we will explore the story, its themes, and the messages it conveys. We'll look at the characters, the plot, and the lessons we can learn from this powerful piece. Let's get started. Now, moving on to slide 2, which is about the contents of our presentation. Here, I want to emphasize that understanding the structure helps us better grasp the overall story. We've organized the presentation into several key sections to guide you through the journey, starting with an introduction to the main themes, then exploring the main characters of the story, which are essential to understanding the plot. Next, we'll look at the title justification, explaining why the story is titled the way it is and how it relates to the message. After that, we'll move on to the summary, tying everything together and highlighting the main takeaways. Then, we'll discuss the About the Author section, giving context to the storyteller behind the narrative. Following that, we'll share the moral of the story, which encapsulates the core lesson. And finally, we'll conclude with the end slide, signaling the completion of our presentation. This structure is designed to make the story engaging and memorable, connecting all the points to the overall theme of growth and learning. Let's take a moment to explore the moral of the story. This slide provides an overview of the key themes and lessons we want to highlight. As we go through each point, keep in mind how they connect to the overall message we're trying to convey. First, the title justification explains why the story was titled as it is, giving us insight into its deeper meaning. Next, the characters section introduces the main players and their roles, which are crucial for understanding the story's dynamics. Moving on, the summary offers a quick recap of the plot and its significance. Then, About the Author gives us context about who created this story and their background, adding depth to our interpretation. Finally, the content section ties everything together, emphasizing the core ideas and how they relate to our broader themes. Throughout this slide, the main goal is to show how these elements collectively reinforce the moral and help us grasp the story's full impact. Hoy quiero hablaros un poco sobre Gregorio López y Fuentes, un autor muy importante en la literatura mexicana. Él fue novelista, poeta y periodista, y nació en Veracruz, México, el 17 de noviembre de 1897. Su vida estuvo muy vinculada a un periodo crucial de nuestra historia, la Revolución Mexicana. De hecho, es considerado uno de los principales cronistas de ese conflicto, porque sus obras reflejan de manera profunda y auténtica los eventos y sentimientos de esa época. Gregorio López y Fuentes nos dejó un legado literario muy importante, con obras como La Siringa de Cristal, Campamento y A Letter to God. Muchas de sus historias están relacionadas con la guerra civil en México, lo que nos ayuda a entender mejor ese momento tan complejo y lleno de cambios. Falleció en la Ciudad de México, el 10 de diciembre de 1966, pero su trabajo sigue siendo fundamental para comprender la historia y cultura mexicanas. Su vida y sus obras nos muestran como la literatura puede ser una ventana para entender mejor los conflictos y las historias que nos definen como nación. Now, let's turn our attention to Lencho's disappointment. After the devastating hailstorm, Lencho was hopeful that his crops would recover, but as the situation worsened, his hope started to fade. His faith in divine help was strong, yet he was also painfully aware of the harsh reality he faced. This disappointment highlights the emotional core of the story, how hope and despair often coexist in challenging times. Next, we see the postmaster's deed. Despite the initial skepticism, the postmaster and the postal workers show compassion by collecting money to help Lencho. Their act of kindness underscores a key theme of the story: human goodness and solidarity in times of need. It also contrasts with Lencho's unwavering belief that only divine intervention can solve his problems, reminding us of the importance of community and empathy. Together, these moments, the disappointment and the postmaster's deed, connect to our overall theme of hope, faith, and human kindness. They remind us that even in the darkest moments, small acts of generosity can shine through and bring hope to those in need. A Letter to God is a story written by G.L. Fuentes that beautifully illustrates the unwavering faith of a farmer named Lencho. In the story, Lencho is deeply hopeful that his crops will be saved by rainfall. He notices the clouds and shares his excitement with his wife. Just as everyone is called for dinner, it begins to rain, and Lencho feels joyful, even imagining the raindrops as coins that will help him. However, suddenly, a hailstorm starts, and it causes great destruction. Lencho hopes it will end soon, but the storm lasts for an entire hour, leaving his fields white as if covered in salt. All his crops are destroyed, and Lencho feels very sad. The whole family is worried about not having enough food for the year. Yet, despite this, Lencho's faith remains strong. He believes that God will help him, so he writes a heartfelt letter asking for 100 pesos. He addresses the letter to God and sends it in the mail. The postman who receives it finds it amusing and takes it to the postmaster, a kind and friendly man. The postmaster is touched by Lencho's trust in God. Wanting to help, he and his employees collect money, and they gather 70 pesos. The postmaster puts the money in an envelope labeled God and gives it to the next person who visits the post office. When Lencho returns to ask if there's any mail, he receives a reply, but he becomes angry when he counts the money. He writes another letter to God, expressing his disappointment because he only received 70 pesos. In that letter, he also mentions that he doesn't want the money to be sent through the mail anymore, as he believes the mail employees are dishonest. This story highlights the importance of faith and trust. Despite setbacks, Lencho's unwavering belief in God shows how hope and faith can keep us going even in tough times. Let's talk about the title, The Letter to God, and why it's so aptly justified. In the story, Lencho writes a letter to God, explaining his difficult situation and asking for 100 pesos to help his family. This act of reaching out to God through a letter really highlights his faith and hope. When he receives only 70 pesos, he writes another letter, still trusting that God will understand and help him. So, the title perfectly captures the essence of the story because it emphasizes this direct communication between Lencho and God. It's a simple yet powerful title that clearly describes what the story is all about: faith, hope, and the human connection to the divine through a heartfelt letter. This connection is central to understanding the story's message about trust and belief. The moral of the story, The Letter to God, is that extreme faith in the Almighty can give you a ray of hope even in the darkest times. When we face difficult situations, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and lose our sense of optimism. But this story reminds us that holding on to faith, no matter how challenging the circumstances, can provide comfort and strength. It's about trusting that things will work out, and sometimes that trust alone can help us endure hardships. This ties back to the overall theme of the presentation, which emphasizes resilience and hope in the face of adversity. Faith, in its purest form, can be a powerful force that guides us through the toughest moments and keeps our spirits alive.